Hey, Larkin Rose here, and I wanted to talk to all of you Biden voters out there. First of all, congratulations on helping to remove from power a truly despicable, creepy, narcissistic, corrupt, power-happy, pathological, liar, megalomaniac, psycho. You did it. Way to go. You voted for the other guy, and you got that twit out of there. He's not out of there yet, but he will be soon enough. However, who did you just help to put into power? Now, I am fully aware of the fact that hardly anybody actually voted for Biden. They voted against Trump, and that may very well include you. Trump was just so freaking horrible and despicable that it's like anybody but him. Get him out. You know, any normal random, even any just random politician, just not him. He's horrible. Okay, I'm not at all going to disagree with the he's horrible part of that. But I do want you to look at who you just helped to empower. Because you did. You didn't just vote against Trump. You voted for a different politician. A different creepy, predatory, corrupt, demented, power-happy psycho. You helped put him into power. Now, you may very well say, well, we needed to. Well, however bad Biden may be, or whatever things he's done, or whatever, he can't be as bad as Trump. Do you know how Donald Trump got into power in the first place? By exactly the mentality you just used to put Biden into power. Because the other choice in that election was Hillary Clinton. And a lot of people rightfully said, Hillary's a psychotic, corrupt, creepy, elitist, basically raging authoritarian communist. She's basically female Stalin, utterly corrupt, creepy, looks down on everybody, is nasty to everybody, is just this gross, horrible, power-happy witch. We can't let her be in power. And so those people, using your exact excuse, put Donald Trump into power. Now, if you went to the average person, if you went to 300 million Americans one at a time and said, if you could put anybody into the president's chair, anybody, it's just up to you, all by yourself. You don't have to worry about everybody else. If it was up to you, who would you put there? Guess how many people would have chosen Donald Trump? One, his name is Donald Trump. Guess how many people would have chosen Joe Biden? One, his name is Joe Biden. Nobody else would have chosen either of them, or Hillary for that matter, as their first choice to be there. So how did we get to a situation where we keep putting in creepy, corrupt psychos, and the reason the people voted for the creepy, corrupt psychos is because they were a little bit more scared of a different creepy, corrupt psycho? And make no mistake, Biden is absolutely a creepy, corrupt psycho. He's been a career politician forever. He can't even pretend to be anti-establishment. He has been in the establishment forever, voting for pro-fascist things, obviously racist policies, and Kamala Harris is no better. She was a professional fascist. She pushed for more authoritarian control and more oppression and abuse of all sorts of Americans, minorities in particular. The fact that she's black, or, whatever, like, she goes from trying to claim credit to being black to being Native American to, or I forget all the things she pretends to be to make you think she's a good person. Have you ever heard the thing of, I have a dream that someday people will be judged by the content of their character and not the color of their skin? Try judging Kamala Harris by the content of her character. She's a power-happy, corrupt piece of garbage. So is Biden. So is Trump. So is Bush. So is Clinton. So is Obama. Now, some of them are better at hiding it than others. Trump didn't bother hiding it. So if you were drastically desperate to get rid of him, I totally sympathize. He was a corrupt piece of garbage. But you helped put a different corrupt piece of garbage into power. Career politician, pro-authoritarian, Absolutely pro-establishment. The establishment looks out for itself. It enriches and empowers itself at your expense, and Joseph Biden has been a part of that for decades. And you can go look up his record. It's horrendous. And he isn't just a commie socialist, he's also a warmonger. He voted for literally the worst of both sides for many, many years. And on top of that, he openly and in public behaves like a predator, like he doesn't grasp that other people have personal boundaries, especially children, and he thinks it's okay to grope and sniff and grab them when they're like wriggling to get away. Does that not hint to you that maybe this guy shouldn't have power? Would you let this guy babysit for you? If so, holy crap, either don't have kids or ask somebody else who should babysit, because you have crappy judgment if you can't look at Biden's open public behavior and say, that's creepy and screwed up. Now, I'm guessing all you people who voted for Biden who are listening to this video are still saying, well, Trump was worse, Trump was worse, Trump was worse. Again, is this all it takes to trick you into supporting somebody really creepy and corrupt and pro-establishment? Just have him run against somebody you view as a little bit worse? Because that's how we got Trump, too. When the election was Hillary and Trump, two utterly despicable human beings, did it not start to occur to you, how could this be it? How can this be the result of our great democracy? If these are the choices that our great democracy leaves us, our great democracy kind of must suck. And it does. And then it gave you Trump and Biden, and you voted for Biden because you were too scared of Trump. And the main difference between Biden and Trump is Trump has been in that office long enough that you can see more of the corrupt, creepy, self-serving, psychotic garbage he does. Biden hasn't been there yet to do that. He was vice president, but whoop-de-doo, who cares what the vice president's doing? But he hadn't been around enough for you to see the horrible things he's doing. He's going to do horrible authoritarian things. They all do. Now, he may not be nearly as openly narcissistic about it, like Trump was just, didn't bother to hide the fact that he worships himself and doesn't give a crap about anybody else. For some reason, a bunch of his supporters still seem unable to recognize that. But if you're saying, well, those were the choices, and that's your excuse, think what that means. Think what you're saying about yourself. That an establishment, a bunch of political crooks, left and right, because they're buddies with each other. Trump was buddies with the Clintons, and, they're all buddies. They hang out together. If that establishment can behind closed doors go, okay, who are we going to run? Well, we'll run this guy and we'll run that guy. Either way, they're going to be pro-warmongering, which they both were. Trump was just as much as anybody else. He increased the droning and bombing. They're going to be pro-authoritarian control. They're going to be pro-redistribution of wealth. Trump demanded to put his signature on one of the biggest government handouts in history, and short-sighted people who don't understand economics were going, rah, 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 yay, he's helping us out. No, they caused a big disaster, gave you fake money, and in the long term, that demolishes the dollar. It's a temporary fix that in the long run hurts literally everybody except the politicians. And it's what the left does and it's what the right does. But, I don't even need to get in depth about that. You voted, if you're one of the people who voted for Joe Biden, you helped to empower a corrupt, creepy, horrible human being. And you're going to learn more of that as time goes by. And if your excuse is, well, the other choice was Trump and he's even worse, I don't even care about arguing which one's worse. To me, they're both just puppets of the same ruling class. The amount of difference between them doesn't even matter. Their rhetoric is slightly different. What they actually do is exactly the same. Trump appointed all the same warmongers and, corrupt financial crooks to all the same positions of power that Obama did and that Bush did and that Clinton did. It just, they put on a show. It's basically professional wrestling. And in the case of Trump, they literally use the mentality of professional wrestling. We're going to bring in somebody so outlandishly obnoxious that people are either going to go, rah, 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 yay, he must be anti-establishment because look how obnoxious he is. Look how unpolished and rude he is, yay. So you get a bunch of people going, yay, because he's an obnoxious bastard professional wrestler. and a bunch of people loving to hate him because he's an obnoxious bastard. But you all fell for the trick. You all fell for playing the game where you bicker over which old, demented, corrupt white guy is going to wield power over you. You fell for it. Whether you voted for either one of them, you fell for it. And if you voted for Biden, you just helped to empower a truly despicable human being. Now you can say, well, the other choice was Trump. Where did you get that idea? And I'm not talking about a third party, because yeah, you can vote third party, you're going to lose every time, they always do. Where did you get the idea that this establishment gets to give you two creepy crooks, whether it's Hillary and Trump or Trump and Biden or whatever else, they get to give you two creepy crooks, and the only power in the world that you have, the only thing you can do, the only choice you have is which creepy, demented megalomaniac are you going to help empower? Has it never occurred to you how limiting and pathetic it is to view the world that way? That that's the grand total of all the choices you can make when it comes to politics, is this creepy crook or that creepy crook. If you're already feeling kind of slimy about voting for Biden and still saying, well, I got rid of Trump, okay, again, I'm glad Trump's out. You just replaced him with something just as bad, but I'm glad Trump's out. He's a despicable human being. And as time goes by, you're going to learn more and more about just how despicable he is. But if you can be tricked into that, empowering somebody else, over time you're going to start feeling guilty about it. Well, I didn't know he was going to do that. Well, some of us told you he was going to do that. Well, I didn't know he was going to push for this. Some of us told you this is what he is. He has a record. He's been a politician forever. He serves the interests of the ruling class to the detriment of literally everybody else. That's what politicians do, left and right. Part of you knows this. I don't have to talk you into it. You freaking know this. You know politicians are corrupt liars. You know Biden is a corrupt liar. If you don't, then you're literally too delusional. Just go turn off this video and stick your head in the sand somewhere. You're just bickering over which group of corrupt liars you think is not quite as bad as the other. And you're being tricked into playing that game. And what's really sad is that the people voting on the other side are just doing the same thing. They're just being tricked into playing that game. So you can like totally despise, Trump voters. How could you put that horrible person into power? Blah, 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 blah. A few of them are like staunch Trumpites, like wannabe dictator worshippers. But the vast majority of people who voted for Trump did it because they didn't want Hillary in power. Just like you voted for Biden because you didn't want Trump into power. They weren't voting for him. He wasn't their first choice. He wasn't anybody's first choice. Biden wasn't anybody's first choice. But you fell for the game that made you feel like your neighbors are your enemy, because they said, I'm more scared of that crook, I'm voting for this crook. And you said, I'm more scared of that crook, I'm voting for this crook. And the crooks got you yelling at each other. It got you mad at your neighbors who were voting Trump. How could you support such a despicable citizen? Because they're capable of seeing how corrupt and horrible your guy is. They suck at seeing how corrupt and horrible their guy is. And guess what? You suck at seeing how corrupt and horrible your guy is, but you can see the faults of the other guy. Guess what? None of them are your guy. They are your victimizers. They are your abusers. They steal your money and pass laws to forcibly control your life and boss you around and limit what you can do. Both of them, left and right. That is always true. You are constantly voting for people who subjugate you and your political enemies. You're both going to get robbed. You're both going to get controlled in a very slightly different way by the two sets of crooks. But if you allow yourself to keep being tricked into playing the game that legitimizes that and that empowers these corrupt crooks, you're going to keep getting the same thing, which we've been seeing for years and decades and centuries. And it isn't just the US, it's all over the world. Look how many truly nasty, horrible tyrants were cheered into power with massive public support. Everyone. Stalin got it. Mao got it. Hitler got it. You can see the mass throngs cheering for him. Why? Because he said, I'm against the establishment. Give me power and I will fight against the establishment. That is how all of those tyrants, and pretty much every tyrant we've ever heard of, how they got into power, is by being against some other slimy form of authoritarian collectivist power. What was the outcome? Did they defeat injustice and bring freedom for all? No. They replaced one injustice with a different injustice, often a worse injustice. That doesn't mean that who they were fighting against wasn't horrible. The reason so many people cheered for Hitler is because there were very real injustices being inflicted on the German people, and a lot of them were duped into thinking, if we give this guy power, he'll fight for us. No, he won't. He'll totally screw up your country. Same thing with Mao in China. Anti-establishment, rah, 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 he's for the people and making sure everybody has food and blah, the communist line. What was the end result? Tens of millions of their own people dead under his great leap forward. But the rah-rah-rahing and the cheering for him was because people hated what came before. But they didn't have the principle to make sure that they only advocated something actually just and moral and rational. They were so short-sighted and so desperate and emotion-driven that all they paid attention to is, we really don't like the status quo, and this guy is something else. Every tyrant is something else. And they're a new status quo, authoritarian injustice. Every stinking time. You just helped that to happen again if you voted for Biden. You just helped continue the cycle. You helped to empower government. You helped to empower authoritarian control and abuse. Abuse of Americans and abuse of the rest of the world by way of the U.S. military. You helped make that happen by voting for Biden. And if your excuse is, well, we needed to get Trump out of office, that is no better than the people who voted for Trump 4 years earlier and said, well, we have to keep Hillary out. She's a scary psycho. They're all scary psychos. Pay attention. Focus enough. Learn principles enough that you don't support any scary psycho sitting on the throne. But what else can we do? Those are the choices. Those are the choices the ruling class gives to you. There are other choices outside of that box, and I guarantee you the choices that the ruling class gives you inside that box will never give you justice, will never give you freedom. If you let authoritarian abusers tell you what your choices are, you're doomed. You're a slave forever. You can bicker over which slave master you want stepping on your throat. Whoop-de-doo. Whether you win or lose, you lose. To actually make a change, if you actually want to see a change, a real substantive change to the obnoxious, power-happy cycle, the corruption of all the politicians, the ones you vote against and the ones you vote for. If you want to see a real change, you need to get your head out of the box that the control freaks put it in. You need to be able to imagine something other than, well, it's either going to be Biden or Trump. And that's the end of my thoughts about politics. What if it's neither? What if human beings start acting like they own themselves? Like we're not beholden to any political crook? Like we should desire freedom for ourselves and freedom for our neighbors and the people we don't agree with, even the people we don't like? What about the idea of embracing actual peaceful coexistence? As much as the political left pretends to be for peaceful coexistence, no, they're not. Every stinking election, they vote for authoritarian control freaks to violently rob and dominate everybody else. That's not how peaceful coexistence works. Peaceful coexistence requires non-aggression, which means if somebody isn't committing force or fraud, you leave them the hell alone. You let them be free. You don't try to micromanage their life. You don't try to make all their choices for them. You don't try to have government rob them to pay for whatever you think is important. and to hell with what the person actually wanted who earned the money. If you keep falling for the game where we all bicker to the ruling class about how we want everybody else controlled and how we want everyone else to be taxed for the things we want, and heck with them, and haha, we won. If you want something different, you have to change your mindset. You have to be willing to allow others to be free. Politics will never have that on the ballot. That is never one of the choices that the ruling class will give you actual freedom. They will have tyrant A, tyrant B, and they will tell you, those are your choices, choose one, and then after you did, you have consented to whatever happens after that. People keep falling for that, and then they're at each other's throats, and they call themselves the right and the left, or conservative and liberal, and they bicker at each other, and they don't realize we all have a common enemy. It's all of the corrupt crooks, left and right. They're the same thing. They're putting on the equivalent of a professional wrestling match and pretending to be arch enemies, and then laughing all the way to the bank as they roll in the money that they stole from all of us. Until you stop falling for that game, you're going to keep getting more of that. If you voted for Biden, you helped that game to continue. If you voted for Trump, you also helped that game to continue. If you ever vote ever again, you are helping that game to continue. You are legitimizing the notion that whoever gets the most buttons pressed next to their name in some booth has the moral right to forcibly dominate and control the rest of us. Consider the possibility of freedom, where you get to decide what things you want to financially support and how you want to live your life. And you allow other people the same freedom. And the only time you advocate force is to defend against aggressors and thugs and thieves and attackers, because that's justified. And whether it's defending yourself or hiring somebody else to defend you, that's justified. But falling for the game of politics, where some crooked psycho says, put me in power and I will use the force of government to serve your interests at the expense of those other people that don't really matter as much, as long as you fall for that, you are being an inadvertent agent of evil. You are helping authoritarianism. You are helping the divisiveness of government. You are helping to victimize yourself and everybody around you. But the other choice takes some actual thinking and feeling and looking in your heart and figuring out what you actually believe in. Because if what you actually believe in is let's bicker over which corrupt control freak is going to violently control all of us, you are absolutely part of the problem. If you just fell for that game because you thought, well, what else is there? I mean, we have to choose one. Those are the choices we have. Oh, well. Those are the choices the ruling class gives you. There is a massive other choice staring you in the face if you are ready to look at it. And it's not going to be comfortable because it goes against what you have been indoctrinated to believe your entire life. It's the idea that you own yourself, and I own myself, and everybody you meet out there owns themselves, and that nobody has the right to rule us. That there is no such thing as a legitimate government that can tax us and control us and pretend to have our consent, because when they gave us two crooks to choose from, we were dumb enough to fall for the game and make a choice. And not having a ruling class doesn't mean every man for himself. It doesn't mean we can't cooperate. It doesn't mean we can't organize. It means we deal with each other as equals. I'm just me, and I own myself. I don't own anybody else's life. I don't get to force my ideas and my choices on them. And they don't have the right to force theirs on me. It sounds so simple, and most people think that they believe that because in their day-to-day lives, that's how they think and that's how they act. But when it comes to politics, the vast majority of people, left and right, have been duped into thinking that there's an exemption to morality when it comes to politics. That if that guy gets enough votes, then he's allowed to tax me. He's allowed to say, you're going to pay for this. You're going to pay for this warmongering. whether you like it or not. You're going to pay for this horrible corrupt thing over here, whether you like it or not. You're going to pay for this new bogus program that's only going to serve the power happy and hurt everybody else. You're going to fund this. You're going to obey. You're going to do what we say because we are the rightful authority. As long as you believe that, you are going to help subjugate yourself. There is a way out. And when you get to the point where you understand it, it's painfully obvious. And you'll say, why did that never occur to me before? Why did I think that the two choices that the ruling class gave me is all the power I had in the world? All I could do is say Biden because Trump's scary, or Trump because Biden's scary. That's not doing anything. That's not empowering. Your vote is your voice. What a pile of bullshit. Your vote is nothing. Your vote is the way they trick you into legitimizing and condoning their authoritarian control of you and all your neighbors. There's another way out. Do you dare to think about it? Or is your current mindset, your current paradigm, is that so comfortable that you won't even consider for a minute, if you voted for Biden, what you just helped to empower? Because it's not good, and it's not nice. And it's not about compassion, and it's not about freedom, and it's not about justice any more than the political right is about any of those things. It's about domination and control and money, and that's all politics is ever about. There is another choice. My question is, do you dare to think about it? If so, there's lots of videos about the concept of voluntarism, and I happen to be rather fond of one source in particular, which is my own book called The Most Dangerous Superstition. But you don't need to go to my videos or my book. What you need to do, if you actually want to be part of the change, you've probably heard the saying, be the change you want to see in the world. If what you want to see in the world is people bickering with each other over which corrupt, demented crook should have societal permission to violently dominate the rest of us by way of law, well, doing a great job of that. If what you want to see in the world is freedom and peace and justice, that road goes a completely different direction. It's called voluntarism. It's the exact opposite of politics. I hope that you at least realize that in playing their game, you help to empower nasty people. And I hope you stop using the excuse that, well, the other one was even nastier. Really? That's all the system has to do? If they ran the two worst human beings on the planet, you would proudly vote for the second worst human being on the planet, and your excuse would be, well, I didn't vote for the first worst human being on the planet. If that's all they have to do to trick you, what does that say about your mentality? And what does it say about your supposedly good intentions? Stop falling for that crap. Advocate actual freedom and justice for everybody. You, all your neighbors, all over the whole freaking planet. And politics is never that. It will never be that. It can never be that. Learn about voluntarism and what it actually means to believe in the non-aggression principle, where if somebody's not attacking somebody else, you will leave them alone. You will allow them to be free. And it is going to be a somewhat disturbing process as you realize that everything you've ever believed about law and authority and politics is utter bunk. It doesn't make any sense. All it is a trick to make you inadvertently support evil. And if you voted for Biden, you did. And if you voted for Trump, you did. And the next time you vote for some other politician, you will have done it again. Stop falling for the game of division and enslavement. Learn about voluntarism.